Welcome to Get Paid for Your Pad, the definitive show on Airbnb hosting, featuring the best advice on how to maximize profits from your Airbnb listing, as well as real-life experiences from Airbnb hosts all over the world. Welcome. We are your hosts, Josefa Kapadia and Jasper Rivers.
Get paid for your pad. 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 Get paid for your pad.
Welcome everybody. Episode 247 of Get Paid for Your Pad. Today I talked to Sophia Bach, who is an Airbnb host in Los Angeles. And if you've been watching the live streams that I've been doing on Monday mornings, 10:30 PST, then you might have seen her live in action, actually. But if not, get excited because Sophia has a lot of cool stuff to share. The topic of this podcast is going to be how to set up exciting Airbnbs on a budget. And that's exactly what Sophia has done. She started by renting out a few air mattresses in her living room, just like the founders of Airbnb did about 10 years ago. And she actually managed to build her business, and she's now renting out free units on Airbnb, and she's making good money from it. So, Sophia, excited to chat to you, and welcome to the show.
Yay, I'm really excited to be here.
Sweet. So let's start with where you started with Airbnb.
Where I started was Alameda. It's just outside San Francisco, closer to Oakland, actually. And I had a really nice apartment in Alameda. It was just way too expensive for me. I actually rented it to host pop-up dinners. And they didn't go so well. I wasn't getting the revenue back quickly enough. So I ended up trying to figure out how to pay this expensive rent, as I was on contract for a year. And I ended up giving Airbnb a try, which was a little bit nerve-wracking as for everyone else, letting people into your space, especially since I was sharing the space. But it worked out amazingly well. Once you get the first guest, you realize just how awesome it is being able to share your space and welcome people from around the world. So, I really liked it, and I started doing it kind of full-time and really just went full speed ahead.
So when you were renting out the air mattresses, how much did you charge for it?
So I started charging $50 a night to begin with, just because I thought it's just a living room and I'm just starting out. I didn't have any reviews yet. And then I just started adding more and more mattresses. They weren't all air mattresses. Maybe one of them was, but the rest I just borrowed from my neighbors, like single mattresses that I was hiding in closets. And I was setting them out around the apartment and charging $20 extra per night per guest. And I was able to host about 8 people in my living room, as It was quite spacious.
8 people, and you're charging $50, so that's $400 when you were full.
Well, it's let's say 50 to start with, and then I went up to 80, and I went to automatic pricing, so it was fluctuating up and down quite a bit. But I would say it was around 80 for the living room, and then extra guests were $20 extra on top. So you do the calculation.
Okay, so you said 50. For the first, and then eventually raise it to 80, depending on the time of the week and the time of the year and everything, and then 20 for every extra guest. So if I calculate this quickly, it's 7 times 20, 140 plus, let's say, around 60, so $200 a night. That's still quite a lot. But having 8 people in your living room, is that like a lot of people?
It is a lot of people, and I did have just the one bathroom to share, but it was mostly younger people traveling, so they didn't really care so much about having their own room or anything like that. They were just trying to save on accommodation. So a lot of travelers coming from Yosemite, or just needed a place to crash while they were exploring San Francisco. So it wasn't ever an issue because people really knew what they were getting themselves into. I communicated a lot to make sure people understood they are just renting out my living room. There's a shared bathroom with everyone. So yeah, it worked out okay.
And how did you end up in San Francisco? Because I know you're originally from the Ukraine and you've lived in London for a long time.
Yeah. I was born in Ukraine and I moved to London when I was 14. So I went to school there and then university. And I just wanted to move to LA. I just wanted to be somewhere warmer, I guess. So I moved back to Los Angeles more recently, like 2 years ago. And then I ended up in San Francisco for a bit just for work. I was trying to do these pop-up dinners with chefs. And so that's how I ended up there for a while. But then I moved back to LA. So all my Airbnbs are back in LA now.
All right. So how did you make the transition from renting out a couple mattresses in your living room to actually renting out entire places? Because you didn't have much savings to invest, right?
Right. At first it was basically just, I started doing Airbnb out of desperation. I just needed to figure out a way to pay rent, and it ended up working really great. And I realized just how much I love hosting. And I heard about a business model where you can rent apartments and then re-rent them on Airbnb. And I signed up to do the course, and the course is called B&B Formula. It's produced by Brian Page, and I found out about him from Eric Muller, who has the Airbnb Mastery Summit. So as I was renting out my living room, I was trying to learn more from the summit, and I'd heard about this program, and I just decided I really wanted to do this. So while I was saving up from renting out my space in San Francisco, I saved up enough to rent a new apartment in LA, put down a down payment, and then another one, and then another one. So at this point, I have 3 apartments that I rent full time on Airbnb, and then a 4th apartment that I live in and only rent out once when I'm out of town.
Awesome. So let's get into the real topic of today, because you've managed to set up all these apartments on a very low budget. And I can imagine, I've never done the re-renting model, but I can imagine if you rent a place, you typically have to pay 1 month or 2 month deposit. You have to furnish the apartment. And you mentioned Eric Muller. I talked to him in episode 175, and he does a similar thing. And I remember he was talking about, somewhere around like $5,000 or $7,000 per apartment, just to set it up. So I'm really curious to hear, like, how did you manage to set up your apartments for very little money?
Yeah, absolutely. So the apartment I originally had in just outside San Francisco in Alameda, how I thought it was drawing people in was the art. I just noticed that, I put a lot of art up because I just had a lot of art. It's like just a family friend who wanted me to promote him. So I put him up on the walls, and it was all for the pop-up dinners. But when I started renting on the Airbnb, I noticed that it just made the photos better, and people were really excited to stay in a space that looked more like a gallery. So I basically took the same idea when I started this business, and it's called Art B&B, by the way, and that's why. So I started with basically just looking for furniture from when I moved eventually to LA. Started looking for inexpensive furniture from either IKEA clearance or on Facebook Marketplace or on Craigslist. And also on this app called Nextdoor, which is like Facebook for neighbors. So on all of these outlets, people are selling their furniture really inexpensively. I mean, a lot of the times you can find something that, like a really nice sofa bed or a really nice bed that you can buy inexpensively from someone that's moving, and they really need to get rid of their stuff. Otherwise, they're faced with dealing with disposing it. So it's basically just utilizing these sites to be able to find inexpensive items to put in your Airbnb, but also some of the things you definitely need to buy new, like mattresses, etc. So you just look for deals online. But yeah, the main thing was just me actually upcycling furniture, I would say, because I would find some things on the street, like, again, neighbors that are moving, they would put things out on the street, like tables or chairs, and I would just repaint them in a really unique and artful way. And I just found ideas on Pinterest and just went ahead and remade my own furniture. It's called upcycling. And that was another kind of draw for my guests. I think when they see that they're staying in a really unique space, it gets them really excited about it. So that's sort of some of the ways how I managed to furnish inexpensively.
Awesome. So let's dive in a little deeper. You've created a list of 7 tips for setting up unique and exciting Airbnbs on a budget. So let's go through all the tips individually.
So tip number 1 is start from what you already have and decide on which pieces of furniture, art, or decor would make your space look amazing and would make the photos look great. And then you just work from there, and you just start sort of matching and looking for things to match those items. Online or on clearance sales, or just from, asking for donations from friends and neighbors. Tip number 2 is to sell everything that takes up space that you can't use in your Airbnb. For example, if you have a sofa that actually takes up a lot of space, but it's actually not very useful in the Airbnb because you can't really sleep people on it. So ideally, you might want to sell the sofa and use the money to get yourself a sleeper sofa. And you can find some really great ones in IKEA on clearance. I sometimes frequent it just to see when they have sofa beds on clearance, because they have really great ones. Obviously, you can also find those online, like at the sites I mentioned previously. And tip number 3 is actually about the sofa bed, which can dictate the look of the entire apartment. So it's a good place to start also, just, when you found the right sofa bed, to sort of work with your style around it. Because, it can be an odd color, for example, that you choose, and then you might have to just restyle your entire place. Tip number 4 is to scout Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, and Nextdoor for items that you might find that are useful for your Airbnbs. I always urge people to be careful to make sure that they really inspect the items when they buy them secondhand, just to make sure that you're not bringing any bed bugs or anything like that into your place. Tip number 5 is to visit stores like Goodwill. They're a goldmine for some items that might be really interesting in your Airbnbs, and obviously they're inexpensive because it's a secondhand store. But sometimes you can find really cool frames in there, or art. You can buy inexpensive hair dryers there, toasters, air coolers, heaters, irons, whatever you can think of. Again, just make sure that it works properly and that it's in a decent condition, and you can clean it up really well when you get home. Tip number 6 is to frame anything that you can find that can be used as art. That means that maybe you have interesting photographs or interesting posters laying around that you haven't framed, or some art laying around that you haven't framed, because people really enjoy that, and it just makes the home look really great. So framing everything that you can frame is really great, and you can find really inexpensive frames at IKEA. I just prefer that because it's they really are, I think, the most inexpensive, and they look very stylish. They're very elegant and modern, so they'll make the art look really nice. And tip number 7 is to use Pinterest. It's a really useful website. It helps you create the look for your space. You can, for example, if you ended up buying a pink couch like I have, you can search on Pinterest like a pink sofa or a pink couch, and it will come up with a lot of photos of interior design that you can use to inspire yourself on how to create your space. You can also find a lot of tips there on how to upcycle. So, for example, if you found an old chair that you might want to upcycle, or a coffee table, or anything else really, you can look up for ideas and tips on Pinterest, and there's a million tutorials there, and you can probably find anything to any taste that you might want to play with. But also, if you're not crafty yourself, you can always ask your maybe friends and family who might be interested in painting some furniture for you, upcycling, or making something look cool. Maybe you have a younger sister who might be interested in doing that for you. So yeah, those are my 7 tips.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing those. And I had a look at your Airbnbs, and they definitely look very nice. If you look at the photos, you definitely wouldn't think that you've managed to do this on such a small budget, because it just looks really nice, really well decorated and stuff. Can you name some of the titles of your listings so people can Google the names, Google the titles, and if they want to check it out?
Sure. I think that if you Google Airbnb, one word, so I put the name of the company into all of my listings. So when you Google Airbnb, ARTBNB, one word, new and pool, I think you would be able to come up with my listings. Eco also is another word that I use in every one of my listings. So Airbnb, new, LAX, pool, eco, definitely like at least one of my listings will come up, and then you can from there find my profile and you can see all 5 of my listings.
Awesome. And I'll also put links to your listings in the show notes that you can find at getpaidforyourpet.com/podcast. And so there will be the links, but also all the topics that we have talked about and Sophia's tips, etc. And I will also send out an email for every podcast now. So if you haven't signed up for my email list, you can do so at getpaidforyourpet.com. And then you also receive an email every time a podcast goes live with all the links and the topics in there as well, just to make sure you have everything right there at your fingertips.
Great.
Let's see, what else can we talk about? I know you have some plans, some big plans actually, when it comes to Airbnb, because right now you have free apartments and you're renting out the one that you live at sometimes, and that's kind of like your full-time business.
Yeah.
But you have bigger plans than that, right?
Yes. So at the moment I have 5 listings, even though I only have 3 apartments. And that is because, like I said, one of them I live in, and then I have one more listing which rents out 2 of my apartments together. So I have a 1-bedroom that I rent out, a 2-bedroom, and sometimes I rent them out together for like larger groups, a 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom. They're next to each other. But my plans are to get a building in El Segundo, which is where I live. It's an area of LA by the airport, and we're really close to the beach, and it's a very cool kind of up-and-coming place. And Airbnb is legal here, so I just would love to create a sort of like a boutique hotel, but all Airbnb buildings. So actually this afternoon, we actually have a meeting with an investor who's interested in buying the building for us. And I would, renting it out to me so that I can create sort of like an Airbnb hotel in that space. So that's very exciting. And I can say that I'm looking for more people to collaborate with at the moment, because it's still in the works. It's still pretty new. But I guess if anybody else is interested in this project, they can reach out to me for sure.
Awesome. That sounds really exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's definitely going to be similar to what I'm doing right now. Airbnb brand is going to be carried on into the space. Like, we will definitely have a lot of art installations and paintings and artists working on the property and murals. So it's going to be a very exciting place to be.
Well, we definitely have to get you back on once you have that building set up. That sounds really cool.
Yeah,
and
fingers crossed.
That's great that Airbnb is legal in your area, because like a lot of places in Los Angeles, there's a lot of pushback.
Yes.
Places like Santa Monica, Orange County.
Mm-hmm.
So that's great. Awesome. Well, Sophia, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your tips and very excited to hear in the future what you're going to do with this building.
Absolutely.
And, I think it's really great how you've managed to set up your business on a budget. Basically building it from scratch, and I'm sure that's very inspirational to the listeners as well. So thank you so much for joining, and the listeners, thanks for listening.
Thank you so much.
Podcast a week these days. It's every Wednesday, and of course every Monday at 10:30 a.m. PST. You can join my live stream on Facebook and YouTube. And in the live stream, I actually go over other people's Airbnb listings, and so you can ask questions, or you can kind of like watch at the listings and see what you would improve about it and comment. So it's super fun. And if you want me to look at your listing, by the way, just send me an email at jesper@getpaidforyourpet.com, and then I'll pull up your listing in one of my live streams, and I will give you some feedback. Also, every Friday, there's a new video coming out on the YouTube channel. So if you haven't subscribed, go to YouTube, Get Paid for Your Pet, and make sure you're subscribed so that you get all the latest tips on Airbnb hosting and investing. And with that, we've come to the end of the episode. So thanks again for listening, and until next time.
Thank you.
Get paid for your pet. Get paid for your pet. Get paid for your pet.